Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Today, talking about PowerPoint Designer, which is a new tool that I've just started using a little bit, and I'll show you a couple of examples on how I use it and some things to think about as you make use of, this new tool. There's some limitations, there's some things to know, but it's pretty cool, and I've used it a few times. And as a person that's not that good at designing, I found it to be pretty valuable. So let's get going. Let me first of all tell you a little bit about, let me do this, turn that off. Then to do one little thing here real quick, and going to bring up the slide deck that I mean to share. And so I've got a couple different things. I'm going to do a little bit of slides about PowerPoint Designer, and I'm also going to then show you how I actually use it on a slide deck. And I'll start with a deck that I used for a previous stream, and then show you how Designer deals with that deck, and then I'll show you how it deals with other templates. It turns out there's different ways it deals with different templates. So before we get going, I'm Nils Davis. You probably know that, author of this book, The Secret Product Manager Handbook, which is all about the basics of product management. It's a secret handbook that I wish somebody had given me when I started as a product manager many years ago. I also do coaching and some training, and I'm a product manager in my day job as well. So let's get going. So the way I think about PowerPoint Designer, it's really designed for non-designers. So you can see here, let me switch over to the slideshow view. Basically, this is a slide that looks decently designed. I mean, it's not beautiful, and it's not like I'm a professional designer, but this was made by PowerPoint Designer. And you can see over on the right-hand side in the red box, there are a bunch of different design ideas, and this just uses one of them. And so essentially that's what this thing does, is it takes your slides and it tries to infer something about them, particularly if you have an image, and it tries to do some treatments to the image. So the way this works is, I'll just give you some notes here, that the design ideas, as I mentioned, they're different for different templates. It does try to do a little bit of inference about what your slide might be about. Like when you have bullet points, it might try to figure out some appropriate icons based on the wording. It's not a full solution, as you'll see. It's kind of a 70% solution. A lot of times it's good enough. Sometimes you have to do some tweaking. Some of the basics of design, like consistency and alignment and repetition, those are up to you. It sometimes creates things that aren't very well aligned. It may also mean that as you look at how Designer treats your content on your slides, you may want to change the content so it can do a better job of coming up with a design. And of course, it doesn't replace a real designer. Now let's switch over to the other to my other window here. So I have to do this. Get out of PowerPoint presentation mode. And now let me just make sure this is happening. Yeah. So basically, I have here a slide deck that I did. Oops, I'm in the wrong one. A slide deck that I used probably a few months ago now. Well, no, actually, this was one of the recent ones that I did, how to go to market. And the reason I'm using this one is just because it's a sort of a very basic slide deck. You can see it uses the same kind of title slide as the slides that I'm sharing today. And it has the same, welcome to the channel picture, and but it also has this question of the day. I'm looking over there to my other monitor so I can see what it looks like. But you can see it's got this question of the day slide, and it's got a slide that's got some bullets on it and things like that. So if the way to turn on Designer is to go up here to the design menu option up in PowerPoint, and then way over here on the right here is this button that says Design Ideas. So I'm going to click on Design Ideas, and it will start doing some design ideas for me. So let me click back on the title just because this is an interesting one. So you can see that this is a title slide for this template, and it is kind of giving me a bunch of things that are not very good, actually. This is kind of disappointing. Let's take a look at this one, question of the day. Well, this one is also, it's using that title format a little bit up in that first idea. It's also, these are not very good suggestions. Now let me do one more thing. So let me just go over here, and one of the things that designers are actually pretty good at is figuring out what to do with images. But it really, again, depends on the template that you're using. So let me insert an image here. So I've got a bunch of images that I've downloaded, and I'll tell you a little bit at the end about where I get my images from, because it's useful to know, I think. So the image I want to use here is where is it? This one, discussion boxing. You'll see why it's called that in a minute. So I'm going to insert that. And so it just goes, it's just going to line up on the thing. And then the designer is going to start thinking about that. And it's going to come up with some potential ways to show this content better, right? So there's a simple thing. It sort of put it into place. It gave it a little bit of a text treatment over here on the right. And then you can see there's some other options. Mostly of these are not that interesting. So this is one of the things you have to notice is that, and I'll show you in a minute here, that using different templates can really make a difference in how designer applies its design ideas. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go to a different template. I'm going to use the most basic Microsoft template, which is called Office Theme. I don't know if you can see the little pop-up there, but this is called Office Theme. So if I apply Office Theme to this set of slides, then Office Theme by default is very plain. And you can see that it's really planed out. All of my slides over here now are pretty plain. But let's see what it's now done in terms of design ideas. Well, this is a lot more interesting. So it's given me this one here, this sort of blue splotch, which I like. It's got this one, which has got some, I guess, planets or something, and a few others. Let's see, best practices for. So that's another splotchy one. So there's some things that it can do. Now, if I actually go here and I add an image, so I'll do the same thing I did before, but I have a different image because this is about markets. So let me bring up the market image. That's this one here. Insert. So it's going to bring that into this slide, and then it's going to give me some different ideas. And see how this is, it just kind of does some kind of interesting and cool things, right? It does this little circle thing for the headline, and or it'll do this one. It loves doing these circle cutouts. One of the things that's interesting about what PowerPoint Designer is, it's very hard to do these things manually in PowerPoint. You can do a little bit of it where you can use images to act as alpha masks or masks for other images, but it's pretty tricky, and it doesn't always work the way that you want it to. I did spend some time trying to replicate a version of an image like this by using some, and I'll even show you where that comes from. I think it's let's see, one of these. Well, I do not know where. Oh, I probably have to select an image. Yeah, there we go. So let me select an image, and then I think I can do it. Well, at any rate, I didn't prepare for that, but there is an option somewhere in here that lets you do some things like intersecting and joining different images together, and that allows you to do some things that are sort of like what Designer does for you. But the point is, Designer does them for you automatically. Now, of course, the downside of what Designer does is that it has a limited set of things it knows how to do. So it knows how to do the circle cut, it knows how to do this splash little background, and it'll put them in different colors sometimes depending on the color theme of the presentation. But those are essentially what it'll do. Now, if we go back to this this slide that has the image in it already, well, you can see here's a problem. There already was a design idea for this slide, and then I selected one of them, and it put it into this format that is, it's the 2-column format. Actually, it's got 4 different things here, and it doesn't really know what to do with that. So actually, what I need to do, and I think this will work, if I go back, let me do this, go to reset. Will that work? Nope. What I need to do is go back here and say title, and if I do that, then it's going to it's going to be able to do something with that design. So now it's again generating these design ideas. And so again, you can see, oh, there's that circle cut out with sort of an interesting rough edge around it. And then this one here, we saw this one already. So, but this is also pretty interesting. It's got this other kind of approach here, which is sort of it's changing the background color. One of the things that does happen all the time when you apply these designs is they shrink the text oftentimes. And so you can do two things in response to this. One is you can resize them and raise the size of the text. That's something you can do. But the other thing you can do is it might be the time at that point when this starts to happen is to say, oh, I probably have too much text on this slide, and I need to reduce the amount of text so that it doesn't take up so it can be made bigger by the designer. So that's the thing you can do as well. Now, one thing that happens also is that sometimes the design ideas go away, and so you have to go back up here to the design menu or the design toolbar and go back to design ideas. There's probably a way to bring it back other than that, but that's how I do it. So those are some things to do. Now, another useful thing is to look at, sometimes I always like to put section, I don't think I have one in here. Let me just add a section. I'll add a new section slide, and so I have to go back over here, and I'm going to go into my template. So if you watched my slide on, or my presentation on how to make your presentations 10 times better in an hour, one of the things I said to do was to organize your talking points into sections, because that helps the audience keep track of what's going on in your slides a little bit better, so they know when you're changing ideas and things like that. Now, in this case, I'm just showing how to implement a section in using this designer. But so let me just call this a new section, because that's kind of boring, but that's what we're going to call it. So there's a new section, and you can see that there's a bunch of new design ideas that are being applied. So, for example, there's one. Now, the reason that I wanted to talk about this is that one of the things that you can easily do with this designer is you can have every slide have a different design approach on it. And that is going to be a little bit messy. And so what I recommend as you use this capability is to choose a few design motifs or design ideas that you like and use them sort of in a consistent manner. So, for example, I would use this in this particular case. Let's just say I'm using this design as my title slide, and then I have a few slides that are sort of plain, or maybe I might use this sort of treatment, and then I probably would not use this, because this is sort of jarringly different from the other things. So I might either put that into something like this, a format, something that's more neutral with respect to the other things that are in my slides. Now this one these two kind of go together now, because they both have that gray background. So that kind of unifies, and it has this round cut out. So I want to be thinking about maintaining some level of kind of consistency and not having the whole thing be too noisy as I go through. Now here's some ideas for, this is just a slide that has words on it. So what are some of the things that the designer thinks about there? Well, for example, it's tried to figure out a little bit about what type of icons it should use for this, for the words that are here. Now, it hasn't done a very good job, I would say, although the value inequality and the dollar bills, that's pretty good. This is actually smart art. So you can go in there and you can do a little bit of editing. And again, this is a situation where designer may come up with an idea, and you may say, oh, you know what? This is going to work a lot better if I just get rid of these underneath bullets here. And then I can just say, for, when I'm giving the presentation, I can just use Kickstarter as the example. When I get to this point, I can say, oh, so an example of not actually having a solution before going to market is having a Kickstarter program. And of course, it now knows, it has a few other ideas about how to do things like this, now that I've made those changes. And so again, you want to try to make the things sort of match with the other kind of design ideas that are going on in your system. So again, this new section, because we use this thing, this question of the day format, we might actually want to use a matching section for that. And so I would say that you should think about maintaining consistency in how you're doing your presentation in this way. So those are some of the notes that I would suggest thinking about as you go through this. I'm just checking to see if anybody's got any chats for me on here. I don't see any. Okay, good. Let me go back to here. So those are some of the things that I would suggest thinking about as you use Designer. I think it's a pretty cool tool. The other thing I wanted to share was another PowerPoint that this is a webinar that I did a few months ago, and let's see if this is showing up as I intend for it to do. It is not. Okay, so let me go in here. Got to do one little thing and bring that up. Change this to this one. Okay, so you recognize, of course, this image. This is the image that I shared with you before, but this is a whole webinar that I did about strategy for product management today, and I used this, of course, this circle thing quite a lot. Here's another treatment that it did for me, which I think is quite nice, and being able to find pictures that give an emotion, the audience some kind of an emotional feeling is a pretty valuable thing you can do to be persuasive and influential in your presentations. And it's much easier to do that with pictures than it is with words. And so I didn't like to use pictures in my slides because I didn't know how to present them very well. And now that I have PowerPoint Designer to help me along, I do a lot more with pictures in my slides, particularly when I have time to prepare. So that actually, though, gets to one of the downsides of this tool. Let me go back to here. One of the downsides of the Designer tool is, let me zoom forward, is that it does make it a little bit harder to make last-minute changes, or to trust that you can make them without messing things up. Because what can happen, as you saw with that one design effect I applied, and then when I went back to it, I couldn't apply a different effect. When I changed the template, I couldn't apply an effect. I had to reset the layout and all kinds of things. So that just adds a potential level of risk. Now, probably as I get to know Designer and as you get to know Designer, it will become less risky in that way. But that is something that you need to think about, is that it may make it less flexible to make your changes. Another thing is you can, of course, overdo. That's one of the reasons I mentioned trying to be consistent, not using every single effect that Designer offers. And as I said, the types of effects that it offers are somewhat dependent on the template, and I've only really looked at a few templates, so I don't know there might be some other things that it can do. If you choose a different template, there might be some other kind of design options that it can make use of. And I don't know also what Microsoft's plans are for this feature, whether they're going to add new design options, whether you can do plugins that will give you different kinds of looks and feels. That would be pretty cool. But I think, again, you can start to use it and figure out some things that might work for you. Now, the other thing is, of course, once you start using it, all your decks will start looking the same, but in this new way. So currently, if you're depending on bullets, as I mostly do, all my decks look pretty much the same. But now that I'm going to start using PowerPoint Designer, they're going to also look the same, but they're going to have pictures and things in them. So that's going to be kind of neat. So that is what I wanted to share with you about PowerPoint Designer. If you want to learn more from me and my stuff, I have this book. I did mention the book. It's available on Amazon. There's some links below in the show notes to all the things that I've got on this slide, as well as I mentioned that I get my images, like the cool images that you can see here, for example. I get these from a site called Stencil, which I think is quite valuable. And it lets me do both the pictures that I just download, but it also helps me build the, let me get over here, this image here. I'm just going to switch quickly to this thing. I built this with Stencil, and I think it looks kind of cool. And so I've got a template that I built up in Stencil, and I can bring it up here too. Oh wait, I know it's here somewhere. There we go. If I go over here, there we go. That image right there. I've got a template that I now use in Stencil, and whenever I need to make a new YouTube video thumbnail like this one, or I need to make a new image for my podcast episodes, which I do every other week, or occasionally I'll put something up on my blog. Actually, the blog is now the old hat thing, but I will use Stencil, and it's very quick to create these things. They're very consistent. They've got a lot of pictures you can choose from, a lot of icons as well. So I think it's a very useful tool. And I will put a link to Stencil in the show notes as well if you're interested in grabbing onto that, because I think it's a pretty nice tool that you can use. So moving back to here, let's go back to the slides. So let's see. Downsides, more from, so all those things, Twitter, follow me, all that kind of stuff. And if you like, so hopefully you enjoyed this, you found something useful in it. If so, let me know. Click that like button. It always helps me to know whether people are getting value out of this. If you have a comment or a question, certainly drop a line in the comments below. There's also additional resources, as I said, and that's about it. So thanks for watching this live stream. I do these every Monday night, as you know, and we will do another one next Monday night. And until then, hope you enjoy trying out PowerPoint Designer. Let me know how it goes.